Welcome to the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, Ryan Moore. Today is a very special day. It's episode 50. So for this 50th episode spectacular, I want to get right into the games because it's been a while. It's been a while since I recorded a podcast. I recorded the last episode on my birthday, which is September 10th, and it is October 30th. It's the day before Halloween. So it's been about a month and a half since I've recorded a podcast and talked about video games. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to dive right in to the first game that I want to talk about, which actually came out the day that I recorded the last podcast. It's called WarioWare. WarioWare Get It Together on the Nintendo Switch is something... The WarioWare series has always been near and dear to my heart. It's always been something that I've loved for whatever reason. I can't really quantify it too much because on paper, it's not the best series in the world, but I have really fond memories of playing that series. With the first GBA release and then when I really got into it was WarioWare on the DS. I believe it was WarioWare Touched. And I remember going with my parents and my sister, my family. We went to my cousin's wedding. My cousin was getting married. And my sister and I were kind of hanging out in the back seat, going to this wedding, and I brought my DS along, which I very rarely ever do, but it was kind of a weird day. And I don't know why I'm getting into this backstory. It doesn't really have anything to do with the game itself, but it's a fun memory. It was the 50th anniversary of Disneyland. I went there super early in the morning with a bunch of friends. We all hung out at Disneyland for several hours. We watched a bunch of people show up, like a bunch of celebrities, and they did some inauguration stuff in front of the Magic Kingdom castle and all that fun stuff. And then came home, got dressed up, and then went to a wedding. And while we were on the way to the wedding, my sister and I were playing the DS version of WarioWare, and we were passing it back and forth. And I remember her and I were blown away by the music in the game, especially Ashley's theme. Ashley's theme is something that it's kind of a little bit odd and weird. Her character type is basically like this gothic, satanic girl. I think she's like the daughter of Satan. I can't remember if that's actually like canon or not, but it's something along the lines of that. And I was just like, this is so weird for not just the series, but this for Nintendo. And having a full, it had vocals on the song too. So you just don't get that a lot. Not with Nintendo's games or even DS games. You just don't get full-blown soundtracks with vocal song performances. So I always really liked that song and always enjoyed that series. The micro games are always really fun and inventive and interesting. So when I was playing through those games, it's always stuck in my mind. Now, WarioWare Get It Together, the newest one on the Switch, it's not very good. It's really, really short, first of all, and it's very formulaic. I downloaded it and played through the entire story in one single sitting at the end of my birthday. My wife already went to bed and everything, and I was sitting up playing some games, and I was like, oh, WarioWare, I wanted to play that. I sat down and I started playing through it, and I played through the whole game in one single sitting, in like maybe an hour and a half at most. But man, it's really short for the story player, or the single player story mode. And it's also very, 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 very formulaic. If you played a WarioWare, you've played them all. And I'm kind of sick of it at this point. It needs to change it up. Especially since the last WarioWare game that they put out a couple years ago in 2019, I believe, was WarioWare Gold on the 3DS. And so this was a Switch version. I was super excited because I was like, well, they're totally going to do something different, right? They have to. They put out a kind of best of compilation series on the 3DS called Gold. It has to be a different WarioWare game. There has to be something new to it. And there's really not. Every WarioWare game has a gimmick to it, and those gimmicks are pretty fun, when you all things considered. But this gimmick feels like the worst gimmick of them all. And the reason why is because they tied the gimmicks to the characters themselves. So in the story, Wario is a game maker. He's making video games to sell to people and get money. He's a very greedy character. That's his character type. And all the characters that are making up his development studio are all the characters that have joined him through all the other games. You have Ashley, you have 8-Bit, you have 9-Volt, you have Spitz, Dribble, Jimmy, Dr. Krygor, I believe his name is. I don't think it's Mona. There's so many different characters, and they all look the exact same. There's no like differences to them. It looks like they just ripped out the sprites from the GBA game and then just put them in this. It's just, and they have voice acting too, but it's so bare minimum that it's like, wow, did you even try to do something new? Did you even attempt to do anything other than rip out the sprites and record maybe a sentence of dialogue for each character? Like, this is a full-blown game. You need to put more effort into this. This feels like a downloadable XBLA game from 2010. This does not feel like a, 2021 release. And I hate when people like use the year as a defining moment of video games, but it doesn't feel like a modern video game. It doesn't feel like there was more than the minimal amount of effort put into it. And it really bummed me out because it was kind of my birthday present to myself. I was like super excited. It came out my birthday. Like I said, no games ever come out on my birthday. So I was super excited, and playing through this, I was like, dude, this sucks. This is a kind of a crappy game, and it feels very budget title-esque, where not a lot of resources were put into it. It was just kind of shoved out the door with a little fanfare, and the gimmick itself falls apart in your hands, really. So like I was saying, the gimmick is tied to the characters. The characters themselves, each character has like their own specific thing that is happening. The storyline goes that Wario is creating this game, and he's checking out the game, and there's a bunch of like glitches. This alien inhabits the video game console and takes over the video game and then sucks everyone in the development studio into the game, kind of like Tron. So you're basically in Tron, and you, as Wario, and the other characters get sucked into the game, and now you have to play the game that you created. But there's a bunch of glitches taking over, so you got to battle the glitches. Every character, like Mona and Dribble and Spitz and 9-Volt and 8-Bit and all that, they have their own levels that they created. And so you get to basically play as each character in their levels, and there's some specific kind of like ones that you have to do with those characters, but the micro games themselves are designed for everyone. And what I mean by that is each character has their own specific gimmick, like Mona. Mona's on her motorcycle or moped, whatever you want to call it, her moped, and she's got a boomerang. But you can move around, but if you want to attack and use your boomerang, you stop and then control the boomerang separately. So you're moving Mona around with the joystick. You hit the attack button to throw your boomerang, and now Mona has stopped in place, and now you control the boomerang. And you have to wait and push the boomerang back to Mona to continue to move as Mona. One of the other characters, I can't remember if it's, I think it's 8-Volt or 8-Bit or whatever his name is, the kid that has actually the fun levels. He cannot stop moving. He goes back and forth, left and right on his skateboard, and you cannot stop him moving. But he throws a yo-yo up, So there's like these grapple points in the middle of the level that you have to grapple onto to stop him from moving. And you have to usually avoid, game characters or whatever. So you cannot stop moving unless you throw your yo-yo up, grapple to a point, and you'll kind of pull you up. But then you're stuck there. And then there's another one who cannot move, cannot walk back or forth, but he can jump in an arc. So you can jump in an arc, and once he lands, you can actually shoot at 45-degree angles. So you jump and kind of land in an area where you can shoot at a 45-degree angle to dodge a bullet or take out a bullet that's coming at you or something weird like that. There's a gimmick to every single one of the characters. I think Wario is one that has like this jetpack. So he doesn't walk, he jetpacks everywhere. And it's just like a lot of tedious, really not fun movements for these characters. And you're just going through and it just kind of sucks. I really did not enjoy this game like almost at all. There are some new micro games that they put out because it's a Switch, so they've incorporated things like Pikmin 3, Breath of the Wild, and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air. This is actually pretty enjoyable. But those micro games are so short most of the time that you just end up skimming past them and really don't get the enjoyment out of them that I think you should. And that comes back to the whole point of WarioWare as a game is it's formulaic. This game has been made several times over, and it's the same thing with little defining tiny characteristics that don't really benefit the overall game at all. And so I just want something new from the series at this point. It needs that refresh. It needs that coat of paint that breaks the mold, like Breath of the Wild did with the Zelda series, where you had Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, it's not Phantom Hourglass, no, that's the DS title, but Twilight Princess, and then Skyward Sword. All of those games were in the same Zelda 3D format. And that formula got really, really, really boring over time because it was just kind of the same game with new settings, right? Now, with Breath of the Wild, it broke that 3D mold that Zelda had for so long and everyone was so tired of that Breath of the Wild is one of the best Zelda games out there. I think it might be the best. I'm actually going to say it. I think Breath of the Wild is the best Zelda game at this point. Yeah, they did some weird stuff with the Master Sword, but other than that, maybe the DLC, I loved it. I think it is the best Zelda game out there by far. I love Ocarina of Time. I really enjoyed Link to the Past, but other than that, like those games just got really stale and boring and so predictable. And WarioWare is in the same boat now. It's so predictable that it was like, dude, you need to change it up now. You cannot make another WarioWare game in the same formula anymore. It is done, dead, and buried at this point. And it bums me out to say that because like I said, I do enjoy that series. I just want something new. I don't know what that would be, but I don't think it would be that hard to kind of think up some new way. Those micro games, like I said, they're so short, which was really interesting back in 2003, but almost 20 years later, it's not good enough anymore. Maybe expand on those. If they took one really fun micro game and expanded it, here's what my immediate, I haven't thought about this at all. I'm just creating this off the top of my head. But if I was given the task to make WarioWare get it together last year and say, all right, we need a WarioWare game to put out next year, what are we going to do? What I would say is, okay, well, Wario is a game maker. He's making these games. Let's do this alien glitch thing that inhabits the game console and sucks everyone in, and it's basically Tron. Well, those micro games, let's take like five micro games. Let's build five micro games that are really, really, really rad and fun. Build out those five micro games and then expand them. You play the micro game, and then you have to like maybe have Wario. I keep saying WarioWare. His name's Wario. I keep saying or have Wario go in to that game and say, all right, well, we played this micro game, we beat it, but it looked like there was a house in the distance. Let's play it again and see if we can get further and get into that house. And then you play the micro game, but for whatever reason, you kind of break the timing of the micro game, so it stops and the timer stops and doesn't break you out of the game once you finish it. And then you can kind of go exploring in that game, and then it becomes like some sort of 3D, maze, a Zelda like a game or something like that. I don't know, or whatever those micro games are. Take a couple genres. I'll talk about this a little bit later on. Maybe it's a side scroller Metroid like type of game. And it would be like, dude, that is a awesome idea, because it would take that micro game formula that everyone likes, allow you to do the micro games, but then expand on the micro games and play through them. It would just be rad. I think that would be really fun. So that's WarioWare. I'm really bummed out that it didn't turn out like I thought it was going to. I did play the demo, and I was not really. I was a little bit hesitant on it. I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to, and then I was cautiously optimistic. I was like, oh, maybe it was just the demo, and the demo maybe might have been bad. But man, I'm glad I didn't pay for it, because, like I said, way too short and way too formulaic to be worth the buy price at this point. It's not a good game. Sorry. Okay, so that's WarioWare. Next game we're going to talk about is a game that came out last year that everyone loved. It was Game of the Year for most people. It's a game called Hades by Supergiant. Now, I'm not a big Supergiant fan. I don't like most of their games. I played Bastion, and I thought it was pretty good. I thought the narrator was really, really interesting and just gave like this sort of new feeling of what games could be back in 2012 or 2011, 2012, when that game came out. I was like, wow, this is really, really interesting. But over time, the other games that they put out, I've just really never clicked with. I've really never enjoyed. Hades got so big last year, too, that I kind of was put off by it. I was like, dude, this game cannot be that good. Well, it came to Game Pass earlier this summer. And so I finally downloaded it and played it. And I really like it. I think it's a very, very good game. Basically, you are the son of Hades. Greek mythology is all the rage right now. So you play as the son of Hades. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I haven't played it in about a month and a half. But it's a dungeon crawler, roguelike type of game where it's a run-based game. You go through these levels, and you try to get as far as you can. You are going to die and have to replay them. Now, this is where, before I get to that, the gameplay itself is really fun. You unlock all these different weapons. You unlock all these different perks, and over time, through the runs that you do, you also get a little bit of story every once in a while, and it unfolds as you die and come back to the underworld, basically the main level, the starting area. It's really, really interesting. The story is actually really good. I'm really impressed with the story of this. You are, like I said, the son of Hades. Hades is the Lord of the Underworld, and you are trying to escape. You and your dad do not see eye to eye. He hates you. You kind of hate him. Your mother is kind of trying to protect you, but can't really do most of that. Like she'll protect you a little bit. You have your dog Cerberus, who is Cerberus from the underworld, and the protector of the gate to the underworld, so no one can get in or out. All that type of fun, cool stuff. And the story itself was just so interesting. It made me continue to play the game. That was the main draw. The gameplay itself is really fun too. You have all those different weapons that you unlock over time. You spend your points and unlock weapons and kind of pick and choose your path too. So it is always changing. With those types of run-based games, the path that you take is always going to change from death to death. And I don't mind that too much, but I would have maybe liked some sort of save point or progression system other than nothing. And that's where my issue lies with this game. As you progress through the runs, they can take up to 45 minutes to an hour sometimes. And I got really far on my third run. I almost beat the entire game on my third run. And then I didn't get close for another 25 plus runs, somewhere around there. And it just took so long to get back to where I got. Here's just an example. You start off in the underworld, you go through all these different levels, and each screen, you basically have kind of like a screen, a room that you have to clear out for the door to open up, and then you have different branching paths. You can go left or right or up. And whatever you choose, you can actually kind of change your gameplay every single run. But there's no way to tell where you're going to go and how well you're going to do because, like I said, everything is random. Those paths are always changing. So you get to the first room. This is just an example. You get to the first room, you clear it out, and you can go left or right. If you go left, you go into a lava area. If you go right, you get a throne room with a bunch of gold, but there's a bunch more bad guys, and they keep coming wave after wave. That's one example. Now, if you die in one of those rooms and start over and get to that first room, clear it out, and then you have the choice of left or right, if you go left, it's not going to be the lava room, and you go right, it's not going to be the throne room with a bunch of guys. It's going to be completely different. So there is no way to memorize. There's no way to even foresee and kind of prepare yourself for what's coming ahead. It's all luck and chance. It's 100% chance. And that's where I got really defeated by the game itself. I felt like every time I played the game and I went through a different run, every choice I made felt like the wrong choice. And I don't believe that the game designers are trying to make it that way. And I know a lot of people loved the game, but I got really defeated by that because I just felt like my choices don't matter. It is all random, it is all chance, and it is all luck. Now, one of the cool parts about it is because you are the son of Hades, all the other gods on Olympus are kind of like your nephews, or not nephews, that you are the nephew. They are your aunts and uncles and cousins. So you have like Aphrodite and Neptune and, or not Neptune, Poseidon and Artemis and all these cool Greek gods and characters and Hermes, and they will give you perks when you play through those levels. So once you clear out a thing, you can have a choice to choose the gift from Poseidon or the gift from Aphrodite or Cronus, and you'll come through a lot of other, and you'll kind of come in contact with other characters. Like you see Sisyphus in the dungeon area, and he's holding a boulder up and all that type of fun, cool stuff. And I really enjoyed that. But like I said, every time you die, you go all the way back to the beginning of the game and you have to fight your way. So the way the game should feel is that you are making progression. Every time you die, you fall all the way back to the beginning, but you should be a little bit more powerful every single time. Well, like I said, I got so far in the third run that the 20 plus runs after it, I never got even close to the point where I got in my third run. I just kept dying super early on the first or second boss every time for multiple hours. I put in like I said, about 20 plus hours into that game. If every game or every run is taking about half an hour to 45 minutes, I put in so many hours into that game and didn't even get close to where I was in hour 3 or 4. And I just felt super, 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 super defeated. It just took way too long to get to the end. I got to Hades. I fought him. I whittled him down until the last quarter of health. And I died. And then I had to start over. And then I tried to get to him again, and I didn't get close. I did it a couple more times, it didn't get close. I did it like a fourth time and then got kind of close to him, but that's where I stopped. I just dropped the game. Partly because of work, partly because of life. I just could not devote that much time to one game in that many sittings over the course of several weeks without having to just kind of put it down for work because I had to travel. But I don't have a desire to go back to it because I know that game requires a lot of skill. It does. It is not an easy game. And it is really fun and enjoyable. But man, I just really wish they either changed the difficulty setting a little bit or, like I said, save points within the areas. I would get really good perks and lose them and then get really crappy perks on the next run. Like just utter crap perks on the next run. And it was such a bummer to go, yeah, remember that perk on the last run where every time I slashed and made damage to an enemy, I siphoned that health from them. So I was always gaining health every time I attacked. Yeah, now I got a perk where I run a little bit faster. Joy. It was just, I really wish I could finish that game, but I just don't have it in me at this point. I don't have the desire to see it through, and I know I'm pretty close. Maybe at some point I will, but I don't foresee it happening. I'm really tired of the games that require way too much of you. That game is a really fun game, but unless you are dedicated, or unless you get really lucky like I did on the third run and get almost to the end of the game on your third run, you have to be dedicated to play that game. And I don't understand the people who are like, oh, it was my game of the year. I beat it 17 different times and now I'm going to play, now it came out on the Switch, so I'm going to play it again. It's like, why? I mean, I get it. There are some people who are just really, really into the gameplay of games and nothing else, but I'm both, I love gameplay. I love story. I love both gameplay and story. If a game has good gameplay but a crappy story, I'll play it. If a game has good story and crappy gameplay, I'll play it. I like playing games, finishing them, and then moving on. So I really liked Hades, but man, oh man, I wish there was just some sort of save point to say, all right, I've been playing through this run for about 45 minutes. I'm close, but I just want to save it and stop, rest, heal up, so that I feel good and then can continue on. I don't want to die and sacrifice everything that I had, especially if it's like great perks, and then lose all of them and have to retry again. And I get it. That's the genre. That's the gameplay loop. But I just don't enjoy that. I don't think that's very interesting from a player's perspective. of going, cool, you have all this stuff now because of random chance you got in an area or a level that was just way too overpowered for you. We're going to take it all away and you're going to have to start over and you'll never get what you had again. I just don't find that enjoyable. And I hope anyone who's listening to me doesn't think that I'm whining about it. I just think, man, let me play the game. Let me see what you've created. I really like the story. I think the story is really interesting. I want to see it through. But dude, turn down the difficulty just a tad bit for those who have lives, who cannot devote 48 hours to a single run-based game. This is why I don't like run-based games. You have no sense of accomplishment, no sense of progression, no sense of you did something well if you don't go all the way through it in one run. Like, that's just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again and dying repeatedly. That's not fun, and that's why I hate the Dark Souls series. It's like, oh, well, yeah, you got to learn. Yeah, I did, but I got ambushed. Like, that's not my fault. That's not skill. I got screwed over by the game, and that's where I get really frustrated with certain games, when it is literally unfair advantage for to the player's disadvantage. I'm at a disadvantage. I don't feel powerful at all in certain cases. I feel like the game is against me at every single point. And some would go, well, dude, you're playing a game where you're in hell. Like, I get it. I totally understand, but it's also a game. Like, it's supposed to be fun and enjoyable for the most part. There should be difficulty. There should be struggling points. It should be challenging, and I think it's a very challenging game. It's one of the more challenging games I played in the last several years. And I enjoyed that challenge. I enjoyed progressing. But when I got to the end on that, almost to the end on the third run, and then got all the powers taken away, and then just progressively got worse stuff as I progressed, I felt like I wasn't progressing. I was regressing. I was degressing. I was doing it. I was being punished for being really good or having good luck at the beginning of the game. And that just kind of sucked. So maybe I'll attempt it at some point later on, but I would really suggest trying Hades out, seeing if you like it. It's on Game Pass, so basically it's free if you're paying for that subscription. It's a really cool game, and someday I hope to either finish it or some sort of way where I can feel a little bit more powerful or have a little bit of saved progress throughout the game. That would make it way more fun. I'm not saying I want to turn on God mode. I'm not saying I want invincibility. I'm just saying make it a little bit more balanced. If there's a little bit more balance there, I can play through the game and I can finish it, no problem. Well, that's it for Hades. We're going to take a quick break. I'll play some music. And then when we come back, I'll talk more about some of the games that I've been playing over this last month and a half. All right, welcome back. So, next game that I'm going to be talking about is a game that I completed. It's Cruisin' Blast on the Switch. I played a few Switch games. I don't know why. For whatever reason, the Switch is a game or a system where I can go years without touching it and then get really, really into some of the exclusive games, like hardcore, for a while. Like last year, I don't think I touched my Switch for like a year. And then last year I picked up, what was it? Age of Calamity, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and it was one of my games of the year last year because it was just so weird and fun and enjoyable and really weird time in my life. So I kind of latched onto that game. And over the last couple of months, I've been picking up the Switch more and more recently because of some exclusives. This year has been a weird year of very little large, big releases. And so any large kind of big release, I kind of definitely try and check out because there's just not a whole lot of them. So this one's kind of weird because it's an arcade game and it's a port of an old arcade game that came out in 2017 called Cruisin' Blast. It's another game in the Cruisin' series. Cruisin' USA, Cruisin' World, Cruisin' Exotica, and now Cruisin' Blast. And I don't know why they made this an exclusive arcade game, and I don't know why they made it an exclusive Switch port. Like, why? I don't know why this game exists. I think it's a fun game, but it's very, very basic. And just like Cruisin', the whole series, it is a throwaway type of gameplay experience. There's very little skill involved. It is a lot of just holding the gas button and kind of turning a little bit and seeing how well you do, which depends on the difficulty. And that's about it. The levels themselves are pretty cool, but there's not enough of them. And the physics are super off. Like they are just like all over the place. Sometimes your car feels like it's floating like paper in the wind. Sometimes it feels like gravity is just holding that car down, and there's no way you're getting off the ground no matter what. The courses are really short too. Every race ends in about a minute to a minute 50, like less than 2 minutes per track. And there's like, I want to say maybe 15 to 20 tracks in there. And once you play through the whole thing, they kind of, and they also kind of double up the tracks. They add nighttime versions of courses. They add snow versions of courses. They add alien versions of the courses. It just doesn't feel very great and very interesting. Again, it feels like a budget title. I don't like saying that, but it's true. It feels very like, wow, this is a game that doesn't really exist anymore. This is that middle tier budget title game that gets put out across or in the middle of development studios, 3 or 4 big games per year. And we get 1 game per year with most studios now. And they don't ever even put out, or not even most studios, 1 game per year. It's 1 game per couple of years, or in the case of like something like Rocksteady, every 5 years. But it just didn't feel very interesting. I played through it in a couple sittings because I got bored and I just kind of put it down. And the collision detection is just garbage too. It is just like you tap a car, it'll go flying, or it will do this kind of what's the game called? It does it like Criterion's Burnout series, where you can run into a car and slam it off the road and have it crash and break, and it kind of gives you a little bit of slowdown as that crash happens, kind of like the Burnout series, which is kind of cool. But at the same time, it means nothing because those cars immediately spawn back into place, and there's just no there is no consequence for your actions in that game. You can double tap the gas to do a wheelie or do a flip in the air. And if you crash, or your car's going to just immediately magnetize to its wheels. Like I said, the collision detection does not work very well. Your actions have no consequences. So I did not enjoy it particularly, but there was something about just kind of playing that game, downloading it and playing that game, going, yeah, it's a cruising game, whatever. I'll play a few minutes here and a few minutes there. It was kind of fun. I kind of enjoyed it. I wouldn't suggest buying it, but if you find it for download, go for it, because it's a good hour time sink. Like I said, I enjoyed the music. I don't know why. There's this one song that I just was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. So that's Cruise and Blast on the Switch. Then I played a game called Swallow the Sea. This one's weird. This one's super, super weird. Partly because it takes less than 15 minutes to finish. It's almost non-quantifiable as a title of video game. But it is a game. There is an objective. There are controls, and it is not just a single linear. It's kind of linear in a certain way, but it's kind of like a tech demo more than anything else. But I did enjoy it. So Swallow the Sea, you play as this weird, gross little character, and you are in the darkest depths of the ocean, like your ocean-like equivalent. I don't know if you're on Earth. I don't know if you're on some alien planet. I don't even know if it takes place in a universe. It's just a weird little thing. So you control this little character, and you're like this cell organism where you have to kind of float around and capture more cells. And as you do that, you kind of grow. And what happens is you go through this kind of path, like this almost maze-like labyrinth of underwater areas. And what will happen is there will be some enemies. There are these weird little enemies that kind of follow you, and you can kind of damage them. And what will happen is you slam against them, and you use these power slams to kind of progress further and kind of destroy them. And when they get destroyed, you swallow up their cells, and you grow bigger and bigger and bigger. What's kind of weird about this game is the creature design. It's very off-putting and gross, but also at the same time, it's ooh, that's kind of interesting. I appreciate the art style of this game. It's kind of the weird, there's some faces and human-like qualities to some of these creatures, and definitely teeth is a kind of a weird use of teeth in this game. But it takes 15 minutes to play, and it's a full free game. It's not paid for. You don't have to pay for it. You can download it on Steam. It takes less than 15 minutes to play. But I kind of got stuck in the very, very, very beginning. After it says oh, push A to slam against this wall and break through. And then you have this fog of war type thing where you can only kind of see in the area where your character is, and you can't see anything off to the sides. And when you go over there, you'll kind of see it and shine a flashlight-like feature on the walls. But when you walk away or float away, it will kind of go away. So I played this game. I got stuck at the very beginning because of the lighting. I didn't see that the wall, one of the walls had this different color to it that indicates that you can break through it. And there's an enemy. It's the first enemy that or the third enemy that you really come across. You can destroy the first two, but the third enemy, it doesn't tell you that you can't defeat it. And it would just run at me, and I would charge at it, and I kind of push at it, and I couldn't tell that if I was doing damage or not. There's just no great indicator. So I kind of got stuck in the middle of the beginning of this little 15-minute experience. I kind of got frustrated, but I don't think that's my fault for not seeing or not understanding that The first two characters you can destroy, and the third character you can't destroy. Like, you can't do damage to it. You need to tell me that as a game player, if this game is so short that there's a character and nothing's explained. It doesn't tell you what the name of your character is. It doesn't tell you anything about the world that you're in. And at the very end, I'll kind of spoil it because most people will probably not even play this anyways. You get dropped onto this, like, you get sucked up, I think. You get chased by this large worm type creature. You get sucked up and you get dropped into this conveyor belt with a bunch of other creatures. And you see other creatures on another conveyor belt in the background. There's like this big mashy thing that mashes everything on the conveyor belt. And you're sitting there on the conveyor belt, unable to move. And you see that there's a mashy thing in front of you too. So like there's this large column that's coming down, like an industrialized conveyor belt system, and it's mashing everything on the conveyor belt. And it gets to you and it's starting to go down and credits roll. And that's it. And you're like, oh, okay, is there any follow-up to this? What was the point of that? And the point is, it's a game. And someone made it, and I go, well, that's pretty interesting. So that's Swallow the Sea. I think I talked about it more than it does take to play the game, but I enjoyed it. So my wife and I were having dinner one night, and we were talking about games in co-op games for, I can't remember the reason, but there was a game where she was watching me play, and she said, "Oh, we should play some more co-op games." And I went, "Yeah, that would be great." And she's, "What are some good co-op games?" I started kind of rambling off some stuff, or puzzle games. That's what it was. It was puzzle games. And she looked it up online. She Googled it while we were at a restaurant, and she goes, "Okay, best puzzle games of all time, blah, 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 blah." And we got to Portal. She's like, "What's Portal?" And it's like, "Oh, you haven't played Portal. Ooh, we got to play it." So we played through Portal, and she really enjoyed it. She watched me play it. Like, we didn't play through it together. We like, she sat down and she watched me play, and we were talking about the story and all that stuff. She's like watching me play through it, and we got to the end, and I forgot how short Portal 1 really is. It's crazy short. You can go through it in about 2 hours in one sitting. And I was like, wow, that's really fun. She's like, that's super short. I didn't realize it was going to be that short. So I was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then we started playing Portal 2, and that's a blast because that's a much better, I mean, if you've played those two games, Portal 1 is a very tech demo type of game where it's very polished because it's Valve, and Valve used to make great games. But going from Portal 1 to Portal 2, and going from the original game engine to the Source engine, oh man, it's night and day difference how crazy Portal 2 is compared to Portal 1. But it does show its age now because of the fidelity of all the graphics and the textures and the formatting and the way it's designed. You can see that's a very, of its time type of game. And it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's not a slight on the game at all. I think it's probably better than most games still made nowadays. But wow, it is a very... It's almost like a time capsule in a way. Maybe it's just because I played it and went through it a couple times. This is my third playthrough of Portal 1 and 2. And I'm still really enjoying it. And it's always a bummer in a way to go back to, because you see how much Valve put into that series and how well they used to make games, and now they don't make games. They just make hats and crappy card-based games and hold up a storefront, and that's pretty much it. It's such a bummer. I totally get why people love Valve. And especially playing Half-Life Alyx last year in VR, it's like, holy crap, when Valve actually tries, it's some of the best stuff. I get why people love the Half-Life series. They really need to focus. They really need to stop this, free-to-play crap. It is killing video games. single player games and multiplayer games, do whatever you want, but focus on make quality products. Don't just try and chase the dollar. It's so sad when you see what Valve is compared to what it used to be. I really like Portal. I really like that series. I'm not a crazy fan. I'm not into all the conspiracy theories, and I don't even care about the cake is a lie theories and all this other extra stuff. I don't want to speed run it. I just really like the quality of the game, and the writing of it is so well done. Games, you don't see that type of quality anymore in games, and it really bums me out when you see what we used to have and now what we have now. And it's like, man, we got off on a tangent on certain cases with some of that stuff. So we're about to finish it. We're probably maybe an hour or two from finishing Portal 2, and we just been really busy. We've been I've been traveling a lot. We have, all these different stuff happening now. We're getting into the Christmas season, which is great. In just a couple days here, we've got some visitors and in-laws staying. So unfortunately, we haven't finished it up, but we'll finish up in the next week or two here. Well, I'll make sure of it. So that is Portal 1, Portal 2, Swallowed by the Sea, and Cruise and Blast. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break here so that I can kind of prepare my mind to talk about the next several games on my list. Because like I said, this is the 50th episode spectacular. I'm talking about a lot of games this episode. I've been playing a lot, and I'm really enjoying them. I've been writing reviews for every single one of these games too. So if you want to, check out the website, gameordie.net. That's where I put all my reviews. I try and write a review for every single game that I finish. I don't post every single one of them, but I'll post these because I do believe I've written reviews for the ones that I finish. I didn't write a review for Hades because I didn't finish it, but every game that I do finish, I write a review for. So like I said, check it out, gameordie.net. Stick around after the break. I will come back with some more gameplay. Okay, welcome back to the Game or Die podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Moore, once again. The next type of game that we're going to talk about is a game series that I've always wanted to get into, and I've never have. I tried a couple years ago, and I could not get into it. But for whatever reason, the planets aligned, everything happened, and I got into the Metroid series finally. I tried out the original Metroid before when back in the early days of emulation, and I was like, boy, this game sucks. I tried Super Metroid a couple years ago and tried to get into it, and I got about an hour and a half-ish into Super Metroid. And I put it down because I kept getting stuck. Fast forward all the way to October of 2021, and Metroid Dread came out on the Switch. And I haven't played it. Spoiler alert, I have not played Dread. But I saw so many people talking about Metroid, and I was like, man, I really want to play the Metroid series. And I just happened to see... I happened to see a Reddit post where some guy put out a flowchart or a timeline of the Metroid series. So you have the mainline Metroid series, and then you have the Metroid Prime series timeline. And so I saw all these games and I was like, oh yeah, Metroid Dread is Metroid 5. I already knew that. And then I know Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and then Metroid Prime, the elusive Metroid Prime 4, coming out sometime in the next 30 years, hopefully. So I was like, man, I really, really want to get into it. And I looked at it and I was like, man, I cannot do Metroid, the original Metroid. And I know if I started with Metroid Zero or Metroid, Super Metroid, I know that's the third game in the series. So what do I do? And I looked at that flow chart and I realized in the timeline, there's a remake of Metroid, the original, on the Game Boy Advance called Metroid Zero Mission. And I went, oh, that's what Zero Mission is. I thought Zero Mission was like an offshoot. Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance is actually a remake of the first Metroid game with so many quality of life improvements. It's stupid that I got super excited like I am right now talking about it. So I started playing Zero Mission and I played through it in a couple sittings over the course of a couple days and I devoured it. I loved it. I played through it in like maybe 2.5-ish days or maybe 3 days over the course of maybe playing through an hour or two at a time. I actually got maybe an hour into the game and restarted it because I was playing on, what was it called? I was playing on RetroArch, the, kind of emulation front. And they have retro achievements with retroachievements.com or .net or .org. I can't remember. But there's this website that will basically link into RetroArch that actually will activate these retro achievements. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I was like, you know what? I don't know why my thing is broken. So I went through and I kind of troubleshot some stuff. I kind of reset some parameters and retro achievements started popping up. I was like, well, I'm only like an hour into this. And now since I kind of understand the game, let me retry it. And so I kind of blazed through the first hour of that game and holy crap, it's so good. Man, Zero Mission is awesome. I'm so happy I played through that game. I'm kind of bummed that I didn't know that it was a remake for whatever reason. Maybe it's because it's the subtitle. I knew that Zero Mission was where Samus got her Zero suit. I know the whole thing of the Metroids and all this, but I've never had context for it because I never played those games. I tried playing them back in the day, but I just never got into it. So playing through this series now, I get why people love Metroid. I get why people call things Metroidvanias, although I still hold true to that is a dumb thing to call a genre. You cannot just mash two game names together and call it a new genre. It's taken from those games, but it is not a genre in and of itself by just saying Metroidvania. That is stupid. That's a dumb thing to call something. So I still won't use that term, calling something it, but Metroid, holy crap, dude. I love the Metroid series now. I'm so happy I played through Zero Mission. And what I really like about it is not only the fact that it is the remake of the first Metroid game, but it adds on to it. And I totally forgot that as I was playing through the game. I kind of just felt like I'm playing through Metroid 1. And I didn't think about in the back of my mind, I'm playing through Zero Mission. The name is Zero Mission. She's got the Zero suit in this game. When's it going to show up? I totally forgot about that. I got to Mother Brain. I had a really difficult time with Mother Brain. Holy crap. But I finally beat Mother Brain. I see the end credits, and then the game continues. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Holy crap, that's right. And Samus actually has her Zero suit, and it turns into like this weird stealth game. And it's like, wow, that's really cool. That's really awesome that they defied your expectations. They changed up the game at the end to make it a whole different genre. Like, Come on, that's super cool. You have to give respect to people like that who change it up and they went above and beyond for a remake of that game. That's back when they didn't really make a whole lot of remakes. You know, Nintendo did do revisions of games. They did the whole Super Mario All Stars back on Super Nintendo, and then with the Game Boy Advance, they re-released those. They called it, what was it, Super Mario Advance, and then like Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3. Like that's the title of a game, and it's like that doesn't make sense at all. But okay, whatever. The naming scheme got really screwed up, so Super Mario Brothers 3 was called Super Mario Advance 4. But other than that, they didn't really remake a whole lot of games back then. Not like now. Now we have every month there's a new remake of a game coming out with HD tacked onto it, even though it's high def graphics. Like you cannot call The Last of Us HD remake because it was already in HD. But other than that, man, I'm really loving the Metroid franchise. Zero Mission was my first Metroid that I played through. And like I said, when I get hooked into a game series, that makes me so happy. I love getting hooked into series, especially if it's a new series that I've never played any of those games before on, where I bounced off of them before and didn't get hooked and didn't understand it. And I kind of always been angry that other people like it and I don't. I want to enjoy those games like other people do, but I just, for whatever reason, never got into the Metroid series. And I totally know why. I totally understand why I couldn't get into the original Metroid. That game is so obtuse. And this is what I really appreciated about that Reddit post, is that people were like, oh yeah, great. And I think someone was kind of like, oh, should I start with Metroid? And everyone was like, no, don't even bother. And then I watched also a retrospective, because that's what YouTubers do when a new video game comes out, and they kind of go through the series too, and they say, well, let's do a retrospective on this. And they were talking about, should you play Metroid in 2021? And I was like, well, it's kind of relevant to my interest right now, so I'll watch this 15-minute video on it. And the guy's like, no, you shouldn't. Moral of the story is you should not play the original Metroid on NES in this day and age. And the reason why is because Zero Mission exists. It creates all those quality of life things like the map. I can't even imagine playing through Metroid without a map. But at the same time, it sounds really interesting. If I was a little bit younger, if I didn't have access to pretty much every game of all time, if I didn't play a lot of new games as they came out and did a podcast on gaming and, all that stuff, I probably would play, if I was determined, I would play through Metroid like this. I'd sit down and I'd have a notebook, like a graph paper notebook, and I would sit down and play through that game meticulously, creating my own map as I went along. That sounds like a lot of fun to me. I don't know if I have it in me to do that anymore, though. Like I said, if I was a little bit younger, if this was 2008 Ryan talking, and I was sitting in my apartment in Colorado by myself with no one that I knew around me for 1,200 miles, I'd probably attempt that. And I probably do a pretty darn good job of it too. But man, that sounds like a lot of work now, but it sounds like a lot of fun. It's like almost like taking that hobbyist mentality and cranking it up to crazy enthusiast, where you are so dedicated to this game, to playing through it in crazy ways that people used to play through games like that. Like that sounds like a lot of fun, creating my own map and saying, all right, here's this screen. I've bombed every single area. Now this is where all this stuff is. And I know that. And so that I can go back and make notes on that screen. And then have like an overall giant, like wall-sized map of each each area and what area is it and all that stuff. I think that would be incredible. I think that would be really fun. I want a whole notebook dedicated to one single game like that. I think that would be rad. It's one of my like my wishes of gaming. If I could make something and put it out into the world, I would create custom notebooks for games where they had all the different and that's what I really wish like collector's editions would do. They would have their own custom notebook, kind of like when we used to have manuals back in the day for games, and they would have the notes section in the back of the manual. You were supposed to write actual notes and cheat codes and all that cool stuff in those manuals. They're supposed to be yours. They're not supposed to be pristine. They're supposed to be used. And I wish I would do that with the notebooks. I wish I would take a notebook and use it while I play the game. And it's kind of a bummer because, our cell phones, exist. Smartphones exist with note-taking apps. Tablets exist and YouTube and GameFAQs and all that type of stuff all exist now, so that it kind of defeats the purpose, but there's something cool about that analog feeling that I really, really would love to do. If I could make my gaming hobby like crank it up to crazy levels, that's what I would do. And I would have a whole room devoted to notebooks for every single game and all the notes that I took. But the way that I play games and how I play games is I kind of just play through them and I beat them. I don't really take notes. And, I'm trying to do more reviews and I'm trying to do more even video reviews. I do them for myself. I don't put them online, but I probably will soon. It's just for fun. It's just to kind of a different avenue of talking about video games. I love this podcast because I can kind of go a little bit more in depth. But making that hobby of mine of gaming something very personal and displaying it in a certain way, either by putting out a podcast or a video review or, making a notebook for myself and displaying it in my house. I think that's really cool. And so I really enjoyed, and I think I'm going to try and do that with a certain game. I'm not sure what game yet, but I really want to try and attempt to map out a game like that. So I played through Zero Mission and I loved it to death. So then my next quandary after I finished Zero Mission was, all right, Metroid 2. What do I do with Metroid 2? So Metroid 2 is a Game Boy original game. And I remember a few years ago, everyone going crazy for the fact that some fan made a remake on the PC of Metroid 2. And so I kind of looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, I actually have this game. Because I downloaded it because I remember hearing that Nintendo actually put out a DMCA for it and it got taken off, but it's on the internet. So anytime something gets released on the internet, no matter how hard lawyers try, it will always be on the internet somewhere. You can always find everything on the internet. I did a little bit of searching. I was like, oh yeah, there's this subreddit devoted to this game, and kind of looked at it. When I looked at it, my file, and was like, oh yeah, I have it, but there's this, there's these patches for the game that came out. They're community patches for the game that came out afterwards. So I looked up that, and I kind of looked how to do that, and downloaded it, patched the game that I had, and I played it that way because I knew there was a couple different ways to play through Metroid 2. There is the original Game Boy game that I could play on RetroArch. And with that original Game Boy game, with the Game Boy Color, what they did is a couple different games. They actually built in color palettes in the hardware for certain games. And Metroid 2 was one of them. So you can actually play the original Game Boy Metroid 2 game on a Game Boy Color and actually have color for it. There's a color palette. So Samus is yellow and red. or orange and red, whatever you want to call it. And some of the sky is black, and the rocks are blue and all that. So there is a colored version of that game, or I could play it on original Game Boy Color palette and just have the monochrome color. Or I could play the remake that came out by Nintendo. The reason why they DMCA'd the fan-made game called Samus Returns. I was like, that's a 3DS game. Maybe I'll play that. And I played a little bit of it, and I just wasn't really enjoying it. It felt really weird. And when I looked up how long it took to finish, I was like, I don't think I want to devote 17 hours to this game. Like, that's a pretty big game. So I was like, shoot, well, what do I want to do? And I looked at that fan game. I was like, well, the fan game is in the exact same style as Zero Mission that I already played, and Super Metroid, which I will play. It's got a lot of sprites that were pulled out of Super Metroid. So maybe I should just play that. And I did. And I really, 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 really liked it. I think I liked it even more than Zero Mission. The reason why is because it's modern. It's a 2016, 2017 Game Maker 2 game by a fan that is so stupidly faithful, but also expands on it and gives you just the best possible graphics. It's going to look better than Super Metroid. It's going to look better than Zero Mission. And I think it personally looks better than Samus Returns on the 3DS. Because it's in that same style. It's not 3D models grafted into 2D. It's 2D sprites on a 2D world. So I really liked playing through that, and it's a short game, and I did the same thing. I think what happened was, so this is kind of a bummer. My hard drive, I hate when people say, oh, my hard drive crashed. My hard drive died. Like, it literally stopped functioning, and I have an M.2 drive. So my hard drive literally just stopped working. Like, there was some massive data corruption. It won't get recognized in any computer. It's just straight up dead out of nowhere too. I was playing the game, and it just died. And I'm not talking like storage drives. I'm talking my OS drive. So I had to full on get a new hard drive the next day and build a new OS drive. And unfortunately, the game does not save in the proper in the game's data location. It stores it on Windows app data folder, like a temp folder. And I hate when games do that. That is the stupidest, dumbest thing. Do not place the game save in a area or location that is not normally accessible to most people. I even have a program called Game Save Manager that scans folders every day, or the folders where games are, and scans it and finds game save files. But because it's a fan-made game and all that, like, it does not display it in the normal location. So I lost about 3.5-ish hours of gameplay for another Metroid. I didn't even say the name of this game. Wow. So I decided to play the remake of this game. And this game is called AM2R, which I think is stupid because it stands for Another Metroid 2 Remake. AM2R. It's a dumb name for a game. Come on, don't do that. It's like the game that came out last year called, or 2 years called, Untitled Goose Game. Like, that's the name of the game, is called Untitled Goose Game. Like, that's stupid. It's not funny. It really messes with naming schemes and stuff like that. Like, just don't do that type of crap. Come up with a good name for a game. Call it, Metroid 2 Samus Returns Remake, PC edition, or something. Just come up with a better name than AM2R or Another Metroid 2 Remake. It's stupid and dumb. That being said, the game is awesome. It's great. It's really, really cool, and I loved the crap out of it. And partially the reason why I think it's better than Zero Mission is because It's snappy and fast. And like I said, the graphics are PC. I can go 4K or 1080p with the resolution, and it scales, and it's just really, really, really fun. You've got the map, you've got these Metroids that you have to destroy. So I'm loving the actual story of Metroid as well. Samus is a bounty hunter. She tracks down the space pirates to destroy Mother Brain. She destroys Mother Brain, and then she goes to and is contracted to the land on the Metroid's home planet and take out all the Metroids in Metroid 2. So you're on the Metroid's home world, and it's all dark and eerie and creepy, and the Metroids are there, and you get to see all the different types of Metroids. And then you kill all of them. You actually have a number of certain Metroids that you have to take out, which are, I think it's 39 or 40, all said and done. So you have to destroy all the Metroids, and it's just like, oh, this is really, 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 really cool. So I played through that, and I finished it, and I loved it. And then I was like, all right, here it is. Super Metroid. A game that I've come to a couple times in my life. I've never been able to finish it. Last time, a couple years ago, I tried to, and I got like an hour and a half, about 90 minutes into Super Metroid, and I just got stuck. So I started it up knowing what I know now about the game series. And I've gotten stuck a couple of times. I totally understand that people love Super Metroid and they think it's a perfect game. I personally don't. The reason why is because of the original Metroid issue. And this is my issue with all of Metroid so far. Hidden blocks. Hidden blocks, or hidden blocks that contain a way to get past the screen. There is so much guesswork that needs to be done playing through these games. And backtracking is a big issue for me in all games. With Zero Mission and AM2R, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I was like, oh, this isn't that bad of backtracking. Super Metroid does feel like there's a lot more of it. And I'm getting lost. And the reason why is because with Zero Mission and another Metroid 2 remake, they add in on the map, when you get to a map on the screen, they add in a little like enclave or an indicator that there's a door and it leads into this screen or that screen. So you have an indicator telling you this is a dead end, this is where you can keep going. And yes, there are hidden blocks that don't show up on those maps, but they're few and far between compared to Super Metroid, which has nothing. It just says, here's a block. Here's the screen. And sometimes you hit a dead end. Sometimes there's hidden blocks. Sometimes there's a way to get past it. And there's no clear indicator of where to go next. And so if you're not really paying attention, or again, taking notes of where you've been, what power-ups you've gotten, what room you're in, what area and bosses you've fought, and you put it down even for a day or two, and that happens to me a lot. You know, there are certain times where I don't touch a video game for a couple days on end, and especially with a game like this, that's really hard to come back to. I've got my in-laws in town right now. I haven't touched it in a couple days, and I'm not going to touch it for another few days. When I come back to Super Metroid, I'm going to load it up and go, where the crap am I supposed to go? And there's no indication of that. I don't know what I did previously. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I don't know what power I'm supposed to do. I know nothing when I start up that game again. And that's my biggest issue, is there's so much guesswork. I don't like having to just I hate randomness in games. I don't like having to literally just try every single bomb. It's like when you play through something like Wolfenstein 3D or Doom or Quake, those old games. They were like, all right, there's a bunch of secrets. Find them. There's no indicator. You just have to go along a wall and push the space bar into and just add an angle and hit every single wall block and hit space. And at some point, maybe you get lucky and you find the hidden room or the secret area. That's not really skill. There's nothing skillful about that. That's just wasting your time. And I'm not a big fan of wasting time at all. I hate wasting time. Super Metroid has a lot of time wasting moments to it. So I hate to be the weirdo, but I don't like Super Metroid as much as Zero Mission or AM2R. I think it's the worst out of 3 that I've played because it does have that guesswork to it. Just sitting there randomly bombing blocks all throughout, randomly shooting missiles and running and trying to hit every single block to hope that I can find the next block that's hidden that will allow me to actually progress through the game. That's how it is for me. Now, I could probably play through it with a guide or, some sort of user-generated map or something, but I'm just trying to play through it. I also could probably take notes and have a much easier time, but I'm already like several hours into the game, so it's not really going to help now. I'm bummed that this is my gameplay experience for the first time through of playing Super Metroid, or the first time all the way through. I'm going to finish this game. It's just going to take me a lot longer, and I'm going to have to look up certain things when I get stuck because it's such a hassle to get back to places. Like I said, there's a lot more backtracking. There's a lot of, if you're in this, and this is also something that's happened, there are game-breaking parts to that game where you have to literally reset the game or have it as a save state before you get into an area. Because I've gotten into a couple areas where there was no way out. I got into an area where I was not supposed to be in. I did not have the proper power up to get out of it. And I just sat there for 15 minutes trying to go through every single block, guess, bomb, 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 find out, crap, there is no way to get out of here without this power up that I don't have. So I literally had to either reset the game and start from a save point outside of that area, or load up a save state before I got into that area, which I didn't have because I try and not use save states unless I absolutely need to. Usually it is at a save point so that instead of having to start the game, get to the main menu, load up the game save, load into the game, and then move on, I can start up the game, hit load state, and get right into the game and start moving. That's really when I only try to use save states. Or if there is an area where I'm like, I'm not sure where this goes, and it looks like I'm going down, I'm going to save state right here just in case. Or there's this lava area, and I'm going to just see and test the waters really quick. But I don't want to, if I die, I don't want to have to go all the way back to the last save point. I'll just save right here, test it out. Oh, that didn't work. All right, reload state, and then continue moving on. That's really all that I do with save states. But man, I really like the Metroid series. I just wish there was a little less guesswork and a little less backtracking and a little bit better indicators on the map screen to where the screen actually has a door or not. And then we come to the last game that I wanted to talk about before we finish up this 50th episode spectacular. Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6, I was really, really, really looking forward to. I know a lot of people go, well, it's formulaic, just like the other games you were talking about. And yeah, it super is, and that's a big issue that I have with this game. But I do like the gameplay experience of Far Cry. You have Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, Far Cry Primal, Far Cry 5, Far Cry New Dawn, and Far Cry 6. That is a lot of Far Cry. Oh, and Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. That is 7 Far Cry games with this formula. 6 is the 7th game in this series with that formula. It is enough. It is time to die and bury it and start over. Start from scratch. Start something new. You can't continue doing this. That being said, I am having fun with the game, but not as much fun as I had with New Dawn. I don't know why I liked New Dawn so much. I loved it. I really enjoyed 5, but New Dawn, like for whatever reason, it got its hooks into me. It just made me love that game. Maybe it was the weird powdery neon blue and pink, design of the flowers and in the atmosphere. Maybe it was a story of how Far Cry 5 ended with a nuclear apocalypse, and it wasn't like, oh, this is a nuclear apocalypse, nothing's around anymore. It's like, oh, everything's overgrown, and civilization has started getting back to normal after 30 years. That is what I don't know why, if that's the reason why I liked it, but Far Cry 6 is not as enjoyable as New Dawn was to me. I don't like the setting anywhere near as much as Montana. I think Cuba is kind of a boring location. It's a lot of jungle, but it's a lot of boring jungle. It's a lot of kind of like, there's nothing really here. It's just a lot of trees and hills. The Cuban, the Cuban style is not really interesting to me. I like some of the cars, but like you have like 3 cars in that entire game that look all the same, and then that's it. And then you've got some helicopters, and military vehicles are cool because you got like Jeeps and Hummers and armored cars and tanks and helicopters and missile launchers, and that's all cool. But like the civilian stuff, and you got shanty towns, and it doesn't feel interesting to me at all. And I know some people will just disagree with me completely, and that's fine. But I'm just not enjoying the story of Far Cry 6 at all. I am enjoying the exploration aspect. And I've uncovered most of the map. I've picked up most of the collectibles and pickups, because I've just been wasting time doing all the pickups. I'm like level 16 or 17 at this point. And like all the missions are like, you need to be level 5. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm way overpowered. I'm headshotting everyone. I'm not really dying unless it's a random weird death, like I get accidentally run over by a tank that's behind me, or ambushed by a crazy ambush where it's just like, oh wow, I was not prepared for this firefight. But it's fun. It is more of the same. It is a lot of, it's Far Cry, you know exactly what you're getting into with that type of game. You know the exact gameplay experience. You've got a evil villain that is the most interesting aspect of that game by far. They say your character talks, which they do. They are in cutscenes, and you have a lot of cutscenes with the characters. And your character talks and has cutscenes, but I don't care at all about literally any character in this game. All the side characters, all the other characters are just dumb, stupid characters that I could not care less about. And it bums me out because I am a big story person. I know there's a lot of people who go, I don't care, I just skip the cutscenes anyways. I don't. I watch cutscenes. I enjoy cutscenes. I enjoy stories in video games. That's one of the main reasons why I like video games. Also, the gameplay aspect. I like it balanced as much as possible. But again, if one has better gameplay than story, I'm okay with that. I can still play that. Same thing if a game has better story and kind of less gameplay. A lot of people can't get past that. They go, well, why don't I just watch a movie? Well, why don't you? I don't care. There are definitely times where I like those types of games where it's more story focused, but whatever. It's just one of those types of types of issues that I have with this game where when I don't care about the story, when the story is boring and uninteresting to me, which I can usually find something to hold my interest in stories, then I have an issue where if I don't care about the story, I'm like, man, I'm just gonna pull out my phone instead of watching this and wait for this dumb cutscene to end. I'm never gonna skip a cutscene because I think that's really stupid. Because then you have no context for what's happening. But if it's a dumb and boring context and I'm losing interest and I already understand, like if they're going, all right, we've got a war coming. We've got to take out the bad guy. Cool. I understand the context. We got to take out the bad guy. But if they start going into like infighting within the group, well, why don't we do it this way? Why don't we flank them from the left instead of the right? Well, I think we should flank them from the right instead of the left. It's like, okay, I've lost interest. I don't like when teams fight because that's not interesting. It's just going to muddy the actual progression of the goal, and it's going to make the goal not happen. So I don't care about the characters. They're all way too goofy too. Like, oh, I'm the crazy drunk guy that has a heart of gold, but I'm a total and complete jerk and hate everyone and ruin everything. And I'm drunk. Look at that's my personality. I'm drunk. Like that sucks and is not interesting at all. So I've been playing through it. I haven't finished it yet. But from what I hear, it's not a very good ending either. And I don't have high hopes for it, but I have been enjoying the gameplay aspect. One of my favorite things about Far Cry 5 and New Dawn was the prepper stashes. These underground prep, like the apocalypse preppers, and they got the bug out bags and stuff like that. With Far Cry 5 and New Dawn, set in Montana, USA, and you got these buildings, these houses that have underground storage facilities that have all this extra goodies, ammo, guns, collectibles, maps, food. You've got all this stuff hidden away underground, and you got to find a way into the bunker. And so it added this puzzle element to Far Cry that was really, really fun. And they had all these little stories added to them where you would find a note in the house saying, all right, my name's Bobby and I do a podcast. And I'm doing a podcast right now and I'm locking myself in the bunker. If you get this episode, or if you read this or listen to this episode, you can find my dog, and he'll lead you to it. And so you go around the facility and try and find a dog around the house. And once you find the dog, then the dog's going to lead you to this hatch, and quarter mile of a way down the street. And then that hatch will lead you all the way through this long tunnel into the prepper's stash. And you find like the guy lying there dead and, shot to death or whatever. And there's all this stuff. It's just, it's puzzle elements that add to, and story elements that add to the atmosphere of the game. And it was really, really, really interesting. So I loved it. They do have some type of that type of stuff into it, but I've been holding off because I want to find them all first. Like find the icons, get them unlocked on my map. And then I want to fly to each one of them and do them one by one because I want to kind of pay attention. I have a podcast going on in the background. I'm listening to the podcast while I'm flying around, just unlocking parts of the map, doing these non-story missions where it's just like, hey, well, here's a collectible, here's a collectible, here's a collectible. And I'm doing that first, and then I'm going and gonna do the quote-unquote, I think they're called Yarin stories or something like that in this one. But it's there are puzzle elements. I did one where it was, I've done a couple, and then I went, oh, that's what these are. Okay, I'm gonna hold off on all of these so I can enjoy them a little bit more all at once. There was this one where there's this local legend of a ghost haunting, a pirate's curse, I think it was called. There's a couple, man. There's one called the Pirate's Curse where you actually go into this theme park of or kind of a tourist attraction called Skull Cave, where it's a cave built in the side of this waterfront property that looks like a skull, and there's a flooded pirate ship in the middle of the flooded Skull Cave. And there's this local legend of these two pirates from the 1800s that that were married, and they fought and bickered each other with each other, and they killed each other. And the husband pirate put a curse on the wife pirate's gun. And so you go through this whole thing and you kind of read, and there's like a theme park attraction type of style stuff. And you go and get that gun, and you at the end, and it's cool. It's a little story. There's another one where it's a local legend of a ghost haunting this cave, that underwater cave, and you dive down and there's a bunch of jellyfish, and so you have to swim through the jellyfish. You come into the inside of this underwater cave, and you read all these notes, and you find out that, oh, there's these two lovers that try to escape the father figure of the father of the woman that was trying to escape, and like the the stable boy or whatever who loved her and tried to hide from her, and the father was hunting them down, and they could hear the people trying to find them in this cave, and they know that the cave was already haunted, and they realized, oh, we're never going to get out of here, and then they got poisoned, or all this weird stuff. And it's like, wow, when they want to, they can write really fun, interesting little side stories. And that's what I love about this game. So I'm really excited to go through all of those all at once, like in one single night, and just fly through the map, going from point to point to point to point, and doing these little, 5-10 minute missions. That's what I love about Far Cry. The prepper stashes, or this one, the Yaren stories, or whatever it's called, whatever they're called for this game. Yara is it's the Colombia, or not Colombia, Cuban equivalent. And so you've got the bad guy, and I'm interested in that story, but the little side stories are way more enjoyable. So that's it for Far Cry 6, and that's going to do it for the end of this episode. Thank you very much for listening to this special edition, the 50th episode spectacular. I've been your host, Ryan Moore. If you want to listen to some or read some reviews, or I might start doing some video reviews as well. If you have anything that you want to read of mine, go to gameordie.net, and I will catch you next time.